All right, good afternoon, everyone. Today, I am announcing that the coalition government has ruled out implementing a capital gains tax. I campaigned on capital gains because I believed New Zealand's tax system could and should be fairer. The tax working group provided an opportunity to debate capital gains tax as a way of fixing the tax system and making sure everyone paid their fair share. The tax working group delivered its final report to the government at the start of February. Since then, we have been carefully analysing and working through its recommendations. I've always been clear that we would not be able to proceed unless we were able to form a consensus. That has not happened under this government. While I still believe capital gains tax would have made a difference, the Labour Party has now campaigned on this for 3 elections. It's time to accept that not only has a government that reflects the majority of New Zealanders not been able to find support for this proposal, feedback suggests there is also a lack of mandate amongst New Zealanders for such a tax also. As I say, that is after not just the debate from the tax working group, but after the 2011, 2014 and 2017 elections, which all had CGT as a cornerstone of our election campaigns. In short, we have tried to build a mandate, but ultimately have been unsuccessful. For that reason, I am today setting out that for certainty's sake, that under my leadership, we will no longer campaign for or implement a capital gains tax. Not because I don't believe in it, but because I don't believe New Zealand does. I made it clear that we would listen to New Zealanders, in particular our small businesses and farmers. I also made it clear our desire to keep our tax system simple and efficient and fair. I remain committed to these principles, but there are other ways to achieve them. I also reiterate today that the government will not introduce a water tax or a fertiliser tax. That has been our position since the government was formed. That doesn't mean we are not taking action to make our tax system work better. Through our response to the tax working group's report and conversations between the coalition partners, we have identified a number of priority areas that do improve the fairness of our system. We've already begun work on the tax working group's recommendations on how to target multinationals that don't pay their fair share of tax. We have directed officials to work on the tax working group's recommendations to cut business compliance costs, give a boost to startups, and for better enforcement of current tax laws and loopholes. And the coalition government has also agreed to work to target land bankers and speculators. I want to highlight that again. We, as a coalition government, will work on targeting land bankers and land speculators, an element that was included in the tax working group's report. It is our view that there is broad support for more targeted measures that seek to go after multinationals and others not paying their fair share. We will continue to progress these measures. This is on top of the work we have already done, including closing rental property tax loopholes, providing a level playing field for New Zealand retailers by making international businesses pay the GST they owe, the $1 billion R&D tax credit to boost innovation and back Kiwi businesses to invest and create jobs, and putting an end to unnecessary secondary tax. I am proud that we as a government commissioned the tax working group report, and I want to thank the experts on the group for their work. As I said many times during this process, we should never shy away from debates that need to be had, and we haven't. We were not afraid to look at the big issues we face, but we know that our responses to these issues have to be practical. They have to be workable, and ultimately, they have to have support in practice, not just in theory. We have some big challenges ahead as a nation, and we were elected to tackle them. That is what New Zealanders will see as we approach Budget 2019. The coalition government is focused on the long-term issues that our country faces and developing solutions to all of them. I will now take your questions.
Does this mean that capital gains tax is off the agenda after the next election?
Yes.
Prime Minister, did New Zealand First bully Labour?
No.
Is this a New Zealand First coalition?
No.
What does this say about the state of the coalition if you can't agree on a capital gains tax?
It says that this is MMP. That ultimately we had to form consensus amongst 3 different parties, some of which took different views on capital gains tax. But again, while we have not been able to reach consensus on this issue, we reach consensus on a daily basis on a number of issues that are critically important to New Zealand's future. Whilst I'm disappointed we've not been able to progress CGT, there are many other issues we progress every day that I'm incredibly proud of.
As you said, this is a cornerstone of your election promise.
It has been for a number of years.
How embarrassing or frustrating is it for you to have to stand up and deliver this message?
Oh, look, neither. It is, of course, fair to say that after campaigning on this issue since 2011, of course it's disappointing that we've been unable to reach consensus. But what I'm also reflecting today is that after campaigning on this issue for 3 elections, I think it's now time to accept that we have been unable to secure a mandate, not just from the political parties in Parliament, but from the New Zealand public. While I'm disappointed, there are a number of issues that we pursue as a government every day that I'm incredibly proud of and that we will continue to pursue.
Are you saying that the public aren't getting it?
No, absolutely not. Of course, every New Zealander will have their opinion on this issue. And over the course of 3 elections, those opinions have been shared. Whilst I still believe that this was a tool that could have brought greater fairness into our tax system, there are those who did not agree with that position, and I accept that. Stacey.
If you clearly believe in a capital gains tax and believe that it could be the best thing long term for New Zealand, is it then, I guess, cynical, putting the winning of an election over, over what's best for New Zealand?
No, not at all. The way I have always, and since from the moment I came into Parliament, described myself, I am a pragmatic idealist. Of course, I believe we need greater fairness in our tax system, and we will continue to pursue that, and we are. But I also accept that it's one thing to hold this principle around CGT in theory, and it's another to deliver it in practice. As I say, though, there are a number of mechanisms by which we can deliver fairness in our tax system. Many of those we are already pursuing, particularly around multinationals and them paying their fair share of tax.
What was the point of the tax working group and all the money that was expended on that?
Again, this gives me the opportunity to actually talk about the fact that there were broader recommendations made by that group, over 90 recommendations. Capital gains tax only formed one part of that report. Minister Stuart Nash and Minister Robertson are releasing today the government's response to the other recommendations. As I've said, we will pursue further work around land banking and speculation in particular, and there are a number of others, in fact the majority of recommendations, where we will undertake further investigation or add them to IRD's work program. So we have utilised what has been a very useful report.
Can I ask you to expand a little bit on the land banking?
Yeah, at this stage we have asked, in fact Minister Robertson is asking the Productivity Commission to look at what local government could do on land banking in particular. And that was a reference the tax working group made to land banking being dealt with at a local government level. At the same time, IRD will also add that element of work to their tax work program. There are examples overseas where mechanisms have been put in place to try and stop land banking and the negative flow-on effects from that behaviour. So again, early days, but it's a piece of work we want to do.
Are you involved with the UDA? Because I know that some of the local governments, they were waiting on the UDA to be set up.
We're not waiting on that. We're already asking the Productivity Commission to do work on that for us. And it could either be something that's pursued at a local government level or at a central government level.
So why have you considered considering extending out the Bright Line test as at least something from this group?
So while I don't want to get into individual elements of the negotiation, what I will say is that we did consider a broad range of options. What, of course, we kept in mind, though, at the same time was we didn't want to sacrifice the simplicity of our system, and nor would you want to end up in a situation where you had an option that was so watered down that it didn't achieve its ultimate principles. But it is fair to say we did discuss a range of options, and none of them were ultimately successful.
You said you ruled out endorsing or campaigning on a capital gains tax when you're leader of the party.
Yes.
What if it's the cost of going to government with the Greens in the next election?
Again, I've ruled it out. It is not something we will campaign on, nor is it something we will implement under my leadership.
Can we just have one clarity around, so does this mean no tax cuts?
Does it mean no?
No tax cuts.
Well, of course, within the tax working group, there was a debate over if you were to put in place a form of capital gains tax and it produced certain revenue, could you then use that to recycle into tax cuts? Obviously, we're not implementing a capital gains tax, and so that element is no longer on the table. What I'm not releasing today is Labor's wider tax policy. That's something for me to issue as the Labor leader further down the track, and that's not something that we have considered or finalised.
So will the bright line test remain at 5 years?
That remains unchanged.
Have you ruled out re-looking at the bright line test?
Oh, thank you. Have we ruled out?
Re-looking at
As I
extending
say,
the bright line test?
we've already moved that. That remains where it is.
How much money was spent in total on the tax working group?
$1.6 million to date. It should come in at less than $2 million. Again, I do want to reinforce capital gains tax was only one element of a very comprehensive report. We'll be releasing today the response to the recommendations, which were plentiful. You can see within that those which have been rejected, which is the minority, and those where we're continuing to do work and take up some of their recommendations.
How many of the 90 recommendations will be pursued?
It's the majority. I don't have the exact number, but it is the majority. They either will be subject to further investigation or added to the IRD work program.
Having ruled out a water tax and a fertiliser tax, what sort of moves can we expect in terms of an environment tax?
Keeping in mind that, of course, the tax working group were very caveated in their references to environmental taxation. Very much they explored options if we weren't able to see progress in the areas that they were analysing, such as water quality and, of course, nutrient runoff and so on. Of course, we've already got plans in place which we hope will see progress in those areas.
So what is your relationship with the Green Party?
We have a very solid relationship. I have a very solid relationship with both parties in this government. You know, ultimately, every single day we debate issues where we have different perspectives. The majority of the time we build consensus. From time to time, we do not. It does not affect the health of our relationship.
Have you got a commitment from New Zealand to support on something else, given they have chosen not to support you on this?
No, that is just not how we operate as a government and as parties. It never has been. We debate the merits of an issue case by case, and we have done so here.
Just in terms of you talking about the mandate, well, how important was it you talk about not having a public mandate to do it rather than not having a mandate within the government?
I think it's, ultimately we have to accept we cannot introduce something that we do not have the numbers for in Parliament. But for me as Labour leader, I also wanted to look beyond that practical reality into the future. As I say, I've been a part of 3 election campaigns now where this has been debated. And we have put huge energy and effort into each of those campaigns, undeniably. And it is something that I still personally believe, and I still personally believe that we need greater fairness in our tax system. But capital gains tax will not be the way that we deliver that fairness.
Prime Minister, in terms of the practicality during these negotiations,
as hard as we've fought every single election on it.
And you lost.
We were unable to form consensus. And that's just a simple reality of MMP government. But again, Labour has put in huge efforts in this space for 3 elections now. And whilst I still personally believe that we need to improve the fairness of our tax system, there are other ways to do that, and we are pursuing those.
So in terms of the practicality,
we polled on capital
Yes.
gains tax, saying that would you support the idea of a capital gains tax if you got something back for it? And the majority of people say yes. So
Yes.
when you say that most New Zealanders aren't into it, don't you just mean that New Zealand first doesn't support it?
Well, ultimately, we negotiated in order to try and implement a capital gains tax. So that was something that we have actively pursued. And of course, we were the ones that asked the tax working group to consider options around then putting whatever revenue from it was generated back out to taxpayers. So that was an option we actively pursued in these negotiations, but ultimately we've been unsuccessful.
What does it say that New Zealanders don't support it?
Again, as I say, we have pursued it. We've attempted to deliver it this term of government. And that was something we have done for multiple elections now. And as I say, while I'm disappointed, we are pursuing other ways of delivering fairness in our tax system.
As more baby boomers retire over time and get more of their income from capital income and don't get as much of the tax base gets smaller and smaller and smaller. This is a problem the Labour Party has identified over several elections. What do you think the history books will make of this? Is this short-termism?
No, I think over the past, again, 3 elections, we've had this policy as one of the cornerstone parts of our election platform. Again, I'm not putting forward Labour's tax policy for 2020 before you now. Of course, that is yet to be determined. It will not, however, contain capital gains tax because we have attempted on 3 occasions now to deliver it. We've made an incredible effort to deliver it this term of office, but now we will look for alternative ways to deliver fairness in our tax system.
Minister, in terms of public opinion, to what extent do you believe that the phase of the housing market and the fact that prices have sort of stopped increasing at such crazy sort of levels, to what extent do you think that has affected this public opinion that you talk about?
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, this has ultimately been something that we have pursued over a number of years. And where, of course, over that course of time, there's been varying degrees, huge pressure in our housing market. But that has not been the only driver of this debate. Ultimately, this has been a debate about fairness, whether or not there was a need for reform in our tax system. I have not changed my view on that. It's questionable, though, whether or not all New Zealanders consistently agreed with that premise, though. As I say, there are other ways to deliver fairness, and we will be pursuing those, because my view in that regard hasn't changed.
The entire generation of people that is locked out of home ownership because of property speculators who are making massive amounts of capital gain tax-free.
Again, when you saw the tax working group, when they reported back, their view on whether or not this was an option that was more focused on fairness versus the housing market, they saw this as a response to the fairness debate rather than the housing debate. However, what I would say is that there is no question that we are a government focused on delivering affordable housing for New Zealanders, in particular those who are currently locked out. You know, that is what KiwiBuild has been all about. It's why we've cracked down on foreign speculators. It's why we closed that rental market loophole. So much of what we have done has been about trying to gain access for first-home buyers in the next generation to the housing market.
The generation is going to feel extremely let down by you.
Again, the tax working group themselves pointed to the fact that they did not see this as necessarily a solution to the housing crisis. They saw it as an issue of fairness. I do as well, and I share that disappointment, but there are other ways we can deliver to that generation, and I'm not losing sight of that.
What was Sir Michael Collins' reaction when you told him that you weren't going to be adopting the capital gains tax?
The first conversation was with the Minister of Finance, but I have spoken with him as well. Certainly, I think he shared the view, of course, that this was an opportunity worth pursuing, and we have. However, he also did express that there's to varying degrees, unless you're able to implement it properly, you wouldn't want to create distortions in our tax system by diluting it too far. So that's his perspective. Ultimately, though, he accepted the final outcome.
How can you maintain that this is a transformative government, given that you haven't been able to get this, massive thing that you've campaigned on for so long across the line?
Yeah, I think that, yes, I have, as have many MPs, been involved in this debate across the course of several elections. But many of you will know that one of the centrepiece reasons that I am here is child poverty. One of the reasons many of us are here is reforming mental health. is dealing with inequality, is dealing with the crisis in our housing market, is climate change. There are a range of incredibly significant challenges that we are here to rectify. This is but one, and I'm incredibly proud on the others. We are making incredible progress, transformational progress, and progress that any other government just would not make.
Given the way this feeds into, particularly the housing debate, and your views that you're here to tackle the long-term issues, do you still think now that the current superannuation settings are sustainable?
Look, this is, in that frame, I've already said that I don't intend to make any changes in that regard. What we have made, in terms of the age, what we have made changes around is contribution to the super fund. We did that as soon as we came into office because I absolutely accept we have a duty of care to ensure the sustainability of super, and that was an important way that we can continue to ensure that.
So I guess following on from Jenna's question about the generational issue that's here, a lot of our generation don't expect to be able to retire at 65 on current settings, even with those contributions.
Well, our goal isn't to ensure that isn't the case, to ensure the sustainability of our super settings and the scheme itself, and that's why we have that heavy investment in the super fund.
What tax changes? Waste of money?
No, while the fixation has been quite clearly on the capital gains tax elements of the report, they make up only just one part of a much wider piece of work. And as you'll see from the response to the report, the individual recommendations, there are a large number of work that will continue as a result of the tax working group.
Have New Zealand indicated any tax changes they would accept?
Sorry, what was that?
Have New Zealand First indicated any tax changes they will accept?
Oh, the basis of our discussion has simply been the tax working group report.
Do you fear that you now lead the party of capital rather than the party of Labour?
No, I do not. And again, the Labour Party has campaigned unsuccessfully and on a number of occasions to try and make changes in this area. We have made no greater effort than in this term of office. We went to extraordinary lengths to try and get to a position of consensus. We entered into those discussions with good faith, but ultimately this is MMP. We are not the only party in government here. We have to accept that there are different views and different positions. My personal view has not changed, but I do have to accept this is not something we'll be able to deliver as a government.
What was the reaction from your caucus?
I think, again, as a caucus of individuals who have campaigned for a number of years, there was disappointment but acceptance of the outcome. Again, I'll take a couple more questions.
What about your ministers who are the architects of this policy previously? So Stuart Nash and David Parker, how do they take it? Yeah, again,
I think disappointment but acceptance would be the way I would characterise that.
Have you let down the Labour Party membership, your base?
Again, I've conveyed the outcome to the Labour Party. We've had a discussion. I have to say, though, that I don't think they see that there have been lack of effort on this occasion. I campaigned hard in 2017 on this issue. We formed a government. We took best endeavours to try and form a consensus to have it implemented on this occasion. We've been unsuccessful, but in many other areas, we are incredibly successful in tackling those long-term challenges that we're here to address. The sense I get from the Labour Party, and certainly the feedback I have, is that they would rather be here in government than not, and I believe New Zealanders are better off for it as well. I'll just take a couple more.
Do you think that your caucus will hold resentment now towards Winston Peters?
No. Look, of course, we were different parties with different perspectives. We've tried to form consensus, just ultimately we've been unable to do that. But again, there are many things in which we collectively find agreement, and we have done good things in office and will continue to do so.
The report suggests...
I'll take one over here. So.
Prime Minister, just in response to the wider report, is that still going to be revenue neutral?
Again, that was predominantly because CGT was seen as a specific exercise that would bring in revenue. That was where we focused on the revenue neutrality side of things. Of course, in the other areas, we haven't made final decisions. There's certainly no suggestion here of a definitive implementation of new taxes, so that's a bit of a hypothetical, really. I'll just take a couple more. The
report suggested that the top 20% of...
Sorry, what was that?
Sorry, the report suggested that the top 20% of New Zealanders in terms of wealth would be overwhelmingly the ones who pay for this. Everyone under there would probably get a tax cut. do those top 20% of people have too much power in New Zealand politics?
Oh,
like clearly they can get MPs on the phone, they can get newspaper columns, is that...
Oh, look, I mean, to be fair here, a range of... I've heard individuals from all walks of life over the course of 8 years take very diverse opinions on this proposal. And as I say, I personally have believed in it, continue to believe in it, and campaigned on it as such. But what I would say is what I'm not here to present today is the 2020 tax policy of the Labour Party. That's yet to be developed, that's yet to be worked through. Fairness will continue and will always be a focus of the Labour Party because that is who we are. And that in part responds to the question I had earlier as well. Last question.
Simon Bridges is taking credit saying National's relentless opposition forced this result. Is that the case?
No. All right, thanks everyone. Look, absolutely not. Again, I campaigned on this in 2017. I was a part of a party that campaigned on it in 2 elections before that. Politics is not for the faint-hearted. I've always been willing to campaign on those things I believe in, but I have been unable to form consensus amongst this government for this proposal. Thanks, everyone.